Today's talk is titled Responding versus Reacting, to be delivered by Margaret Biggs. Margot's journey began in the Deep South, where her early years were spent exploring the natural beauty of North Florida. At 19, an exciting opportunity arose in the fashion industry, leading her to leave her southern roots for New York City. This opened doors for a world of travel and exposure to the rich art scenes of New York City, Europe, and Chicago. In Chicago, she embraced a new phase of personal growth, and she married, started a family, and in the mid-'80s discovered yoga and meditation practices she continues to this day. However, life took a sharp turn for Margot in 2009, causing her to return to her hometown with her youngest son. And despite the challenges, she found a silver lining by pursuing her lifelong dream, painting. Dedication paid off as she gained recognition, winning awards, and securing solo shows. And this is currently a work in progress, right? During this time, she also cared for her aging parents, a commitment that lasted over 6 years. This period was followed by a joyful chapter, her marriage to Jordan. Together, they decided to move to California, seeking a fresh start closer to their children. After a life marked by frequent relocations, Margot is now settled here in Cambria. Hey. She has passionately dedicated herself to her art career, drawing from her rich experiences and building a beautiful life here in Cambria. Margot.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here. Of late, I put a lot of thought in my habitual reactions to stimuli, ranging from negative self-talk to anxiety and even aggression. It's a tricky business and requires increasing levels of self-awareness. This all started months ago with a discussion concerning self-love. My theory is that the people pleaser that I am is an unconscious reaction to rejection. For me, this is a result of a lack of emotional support as a child, boatloads of criticism, and the reality of my feelings being dismissed. I was told I was too sensitive, that my views and opinions were wrong, and for a long period of time, I was told to just go get on an antidepressant. So I learned to constantly put my needs and feelings aside and do for others in an effort to prove I was worthy of love. It was habitual. People I'd held dear would give me evidence for prolonged periods of time that they wanted nothing to do with me, yet I refused to believe it. The constant contact would have been too difficult if I had admitted to myself that they didn't want me in their lives. I believed what I wanted to believe. Your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it. It is much healthier to be aware and accept the fact that some people may not want anything to do with you. Responding to this reaction with respectful distance is much healthier than the reactive habit I had of exhausting myself in a futile attempt to win them over. I remember saying to myself again and again that surely they'd learn to appreciate me once they realized what good care I was taking of my parents. Mom and Dad were both quite ill, and I cared for them for 6.5 years. But to my dismay, they never did appreciate the care I gave, nor did they ever learn to value me. This healing business is quite a lengthy and challenging task, isn't it? In identifying our unhealthy habitual reactions, whether reaction is something we say or do to ourselves or to another, we have the opportunity to heal our internal wounds and create a new way of living in the world. It's important to remember to do so non-judgmentally. Our reactions and responses follow our internal state. Negative thoughts about ourselves will damage our self-worth, which then may lead to more defensiveness, self-righteousness, self-isolation, and even aggressiveness towards others. Self-righteousness was a big mistake I made, and it cost me dearly. You should do this. You should do that, I'd say. My internal state when I communicated with them was that of self-righteousness. As a result, the things I said had an air of superiority. I was critical and scolding. And of course, it made no difference. I've identified the habitual reaction of self-righteousness I had towards certain people, and I've forgiven myself for it too. Yet, self-righteousness is something I still need to work on. If only I'd spent more time considering what was going on in their lives, what grievances they may have had. We never know the entire story of where another person is coming from, do we? To effectively communicate, we must realize that we're all different in the way we perceive the world and use the understanding as a guide to our communication with others. Tony Robbins. Instead of demanding, I wish I had used a softer approach. I wish I had paused and responded in a thoughtful, compassionate way and considered them as well. If only I'd used more inclusive language. If only I'd considered their point of view. If only I'd reminded them of how little time we had. Instead, I reacted with self-righteousness. In this example, I've identified the habitual action of self-righteousness I have been known to have. I've thought about what the possibilities may be as to why they acted as they did, and I've developed compassion for them in the process. This inner work has helped me to heal. Lesson learned. I'm now much more aware of how damaging my reacting with self-righteousness can be. Now to break the habit. Another communication reaction I have is defensiveness. Certain things trigger me, and I habitually become defensive and sometimes verbally aggressive. What triggers you? Do you react defensively or aggressively at times? Or have you learned to pause with mindfulness and respond in an inclusive, constructive way? So, first I need to catch it when it arises, then I need to learn to do so before I respond to another person in a damaging way. I want to move beyond my habitual reactions, and I want to prove to myself that I can. This I accomplish by identifying the problem and being mindful, learning to become mindful in the moment when the habitual reaction occurs, and to practice responding with mindfulness and compassion. You have to remember, sometimes you don't identify the problem in the beginning until after you do it. So then you have to learn to do it, when you're doing it, and then before you're doing it, takes practice. After all, the more we practice, the better we get. And this becomes a positive feedback loop, because the better we get at communicating in a positive, inclusive way, the more other people will pick up on it. And consciously or not, they will start to communicate with us in a positive, inclusive way. And that in turn will reinforce the benefits of positive communication to ourselves. And the loop continues, spiraling upward, and it becomes a new way of living in the world. Just a little shift, and the person you're interacting with is less likely to interpret your words as selfish. Thus, they're less likely to respond adversarially, and they are much more likely to respond in a way that is for the greater good. They may want to try to do what's best for everyone involved. Then everyone is working in the same direction, which leads to a greater probability of success in whatever it is we hope to achieve. So lately also, I've been working on self-love. And I came up with a great idea for my difficult father-in-law. So when I practice, I look in the mirror, I talk to myself. So I said to myself, Margaret, you are such a thoughtful person. And what immediately followed in my mind, was self-criticism. I reacted to my self-affirming words with negative self-talk, immediately. It's a habitual reaction I have to praise. When someone I care for says something negative about themselves, I usually respond in a positive way. I'll point out an attribute they have, or I'll say something encouraging because I care about them. Yet at this point in time, I don't have the ability to do the same for myself. My husband's pointed out that almost every time he gives me a compliment, I downplay it in some way. Instead of responding with a simple thank you, I react. Though it may not be harmful to another person, I'm hurting myself. Great dinner you prepared, Margot, he might say. And my reaction is to respond in some way with how I could have made it better. Every single time he compliments me, I do this. Why, I'm getting better. I am getting better. Be it a compliment on a meal, a painting, on one of my artist newsletters, or on any other project. It doesn't matter. Instead of pausing and fully receiving the compliment, I immediately react with self-criticism. Bad habit and totally contradictory to self-love. A key ingredient to healing, I believe, is learning to care for, nurture, and love ourselves like we do other people, just turn it inward. This quote I found by a Canadian poet and illustrator: "How you love yourself is how you teach others to love you." So this is another example of a negative reaction I have towards my own thought patterns. So this is internal. So I'm technologically challenged. Helping me with technology has become a great practice and patience from my sons, and lately Randy too. So the other day I was trying to figure out how to file and send documents with my phone. I was stuck. So I texted William. I said, "You got 5 minutes? I have a technological issue." Of course it took a lot longer than 5 minutes. So why do I still have such a hard time with basic technology? Because I believe it's difficult, and I habitually react with anxiety every time I have something new to learn. I prefer to revert back to TVs with their simple remotes and limited capabilities, and the use of DVDs. I would really prefer that. So anxiety is my internal reaction to technology. My body tenses, my voice changes. My theory is that learning channels in my mind are then blocked. They contract. William knows this, my son, of course. So he started to help by helping me get off the anxiety default mode. And I did so pretty quickly. I responded in that time to the technological challenge by becoming mindful of the anxiety, and I consciously relaxed my body. And immediately, it just takes a moment. And immediately following this mental shift, I noticed a small button, one of only 3, at the bottom of my screen, and I clicked it, and then it was clear what to do. It was really easy. And so I saw how easy and self-explanatory it actually is. And wow, I thought to myself, I can do this. Once you realize that the road is the goal, and that you're always on the road, not to reach a goal, but to enjoy its beauty and its wisdom, life ceases to be a task and becomes natural and simple in itself an ecstasy. Now to practice letting go of my anxiety default mode, I'll have to be vigilant, and before long, my use of technology will increase, and every new advance in technology will become easier for me to learn. Disassociation is another default mode I have. When I'm deeply hurting, I crawl up into my shell like a hermit crab. I may be physically present and I'll continue with my daily duties, but I'll be emotionally unavailable to those around me. I'll limit as much as possible the number of people I'm in contact with. I wish to be alone or invisible for long periods of time. And I'll go to great lengths to find a deserted beach, and I'll do my best to remain as far away from anyone that may come into my line of sight. 200 yards is too close. In the woods, literally, I hide. I'll go get off the trail and hide, literally. So I recognize this reaction to emotional pain is unhealthy, and my husband doesn't like it. So I'm doing what I can, yet it's a tough one. I know that some time alone to heal is valuable to my mental health, and I know there are others who feel the same. Yet this extreme reaction I have of disassociation is not. Wandering off on my own is something I've reverted to ever since I was a little girl. So one of the times I spent most of the previous few days curled up into my shell, I forced myself to go to a book club meeting. It was a small group and a fairly easy text. So I knew there was a good chance I could get through it without having to leave early. And as a result, I felt better. I crawled out of my shell and became emotionally available to my bewildered husband again. I did it. I'm getting to break that habitual reaction and learning to respond to pain in a better way. It can be as simple as attending a book club when all I really wanted to do was be alone. So always remember that a little bit of forward momentum towards healing really helps. It's my theory that all these changes come from a willingness to overcome our pain. Pain that is a product of things that happened in our past and the habitual reactions to similar things that happen in our present. Yet we must be willing to recognize what our habitual reactions are. What is my programming? How is it that I normally react to these things? Why is that reaction not healthy? And then to learn to pause long enough to realize the truth of that moment. Then asking yourself, what is the healthy, more wholesome, and loving way to respond? What response would be good for me and good for everyone in this moment? Personally, when I remember, I say a prayer. I ask God or Spirit or universal consciousness to give me strength and to guide my every word, to help me to respond to anger and aggressiveness, for example, in the most loving and wise way. And you know what? My prayer is answered every single time. And then I begin to believe in myself. I take a step beyond my old habits. I can thoughtfully respond. Then the practice becomes affirmation and the proof. We can respond in this new loving way and heal ourselves in the process. This then reinvigorates you because it helps you to believe in yourself even more. You think, oh, I have proof now, I just did it. That is how it becomes a self-fulfilling, reinforcing, positive feedback loop, which is a wonderful thing. And that's what the modeling is intended to do. As you inject positivity and good faith and belief and hope and consideration into all your interactions with others, including yourself, you're living proof to others to see that, oh, they can do it too. Don't ask the mind to confirm what is beyond the mind. Direct experience is the only valid confirmation. Sri Nisargadatta Mahara. So, to summarize, identify unhealthy patterns, the habitual reactions one may have, such as self-righteousness, disassociation, or defensiveness. And 2, step beyond habituated reactions through the practice of learning to respond in a more inclusive, compassionate manner. This then becomes a new way of living and responding to the world. I am proving myself I can do it. And then the acts of proof to myself become positive feedback loops. Others see it, are inspired by it, and then they begin to change their habitual reactions. They slowly begin to soften when they communicate. They learn to thoughtfully respond. Healing has taken place within them too, which gives me more proof, and it becomes a collective feedback loop. So we can learn to respond in a thoughtful way by communicating with compassion, avoiding reacting with anxiety or aggression, and no negative self-talk. I'll close this with a poem I wrote years ago titled My Greatest Teachers. Who would have thought my greatest teachers would be the frailty of my parents and the strength of my sons? The rejection of family and closed door of friends, the deception and lies of those I thought to be sincere, and the sharp criticism of those that hold faults of their own. Through the rejection, I've learned acceptance. Through closed doors, I've opened mine. Lies of others have shown me how rare the truly honest are. Criticism has taught me the value of tolerance. Right and wrong, your way and mine. This creates division. Recognizing each other's differences, frailties and weaknesses, imperfections and faults, all the while keeping one's heart open and focusing on the beauty and strength that is there as well. This is love. This is love. So, thank you.